Salutations, travellers, and today, in an effort to escape the rain, doom and gloom of the city, we shall take the great way round to the West Country, where we shall find sun, sea, and cheap cider. To some enthusiasts, there are only two ways of doing things. The Great Western Way, or the wrong way. Certainly, the Great Western was very set in its way of doing things. Those who lived in its territory referred to it as God's Wonderful Railway, from its inception as a broad-gauge high-speed intercity line to its eventual amalgamation into British Railways. It always had its own distinct identity. This was as much a blessing as a curse, as their locomotive development was set and followed a distinct pattern of enlargement, but it effectively stopped in the 1910s, with the introduction of 4-cylinder 10-wheelers onto the Great Western's network. 10-wheelers being locomotives with 4 leading wheels and 6 driving wheels, or 4/6-0s. The Great Western locomotives all have a family resemblance, from the smallest 4-wheeled shunters to their solitary 4/6-2 Pacific locomotive. This proved to be the most effective form of standardisation in the British Isles, and certainly the Great Western's engines, despite not being the largest, were the absolute best around the time of the grouping in 1923. However, that is sort of where the Great Western peaked. It introduced 2 of its most powerful classes, the Castles and even larger Kings, in that decade, and then found themselves trailing behind the London Midland and Scottish Railway and London and North Eastern Railway in the mid-30s. This sentiment was more or less confirmed in 1948 when, under the exchange scheme of the newly formed British Railways, locomotives from all regions were swapped, effectively resulting in foreign locomotives visiting each region. Suddenly, the G.W.R. found its largest locomotives, the 4-cylindered Kings, being outmatched by the 3-cylindered LMS 6100 or Royal Scot class, a design which itself took a lot of inspiration from the Southern Railway's Lord Nelson class. Frederick Hawksworth, appointed G.W.R. Chief Mechanical Engineer in the 1940s, realised this problem even before British Railways was formed. He knew that if the Great Western Railway wanted to reclaim their title as fastest and best, the company had to modernise. And it was under Hawksworth that the company drew up and introduced some of the most modern steam locomotives built at Swindon Works. From engines with outside valve gear to fitting modern boilers to designs stemming back to the 1860s, to straight up abandoning steam to order modern internal combustion locomotives. Hawksworth was the first chief mechanical engineer of the Western to deviate from the progressive enlargement scheme. Under his regime, the GWR built its final class of 10-wheelers in 1945, the 1000 or County class. The class took their names from an ancient class of 440 steam locomotive designed by George Jackson Churchward. This is why when referring to the 10-wheelers simply as counties, there might be a bit of confusion. The 440 ceased to be in 1933. A common statement made by GWR detractors is that all Western engines look the same. This is as much of a compliment as it is an insult, though the counties counter this argument somewhat. Yes, they are taper-boilered 4/6-0s without a dome, but they are distinct in their own right. The boiler itself was seemingly pitched way higher on the frame than on any other GWR 2-cylinder 4/6-0. They did away with splashers over each wheel and instead had one continuous splasher. The very first of the class was built with a double chimney. Combine this with a tall and flat-sided tender and you end up with a locomotive with a distinct GWR outline, but with flavours of LMS thrown in. These flavours become especially noticeable when you realise that the boiler is in essence just an LMS 8F boiler put in a distinctly GWR chassis, although in GWR books it's noted as a number 15 boiler. Now, I can't find this information anywhere other than Wikipedia, so this might be a load of rubbish, but apparently the first draft of what was to become the County class included Walschaert valve gear. Shouldn't it be pronounced Walschaert, by the way? It was a Belgian invention. Again, I failed to confirm this with any other source, but regardless, it's the GWR we're talking about here. They don't really do things conventionally, and that's what initially made them the best of the 1923 grouping railways. Perhaps the most interesting thing about the counties was their boiler pressure. It was set at 280 psi, which greatly exceeds the Castle class at 225 psi. Greater working pressure means greater tractive effort, so in theory the Castles were outmatched by the counties. Keep in mind that the Castles are larger and have 4 cylinders. But the counties were always meant as mixed traffic machines, so trying to get express performance out of an engine which has to slog along with good strains for half its life is like using a supercar exclusively for trips down 50-mile-an-hour lanes. The counties steamed poorly, never being able to maintain that 280 psi, especially not with the regulator fully open. The prototype was built with a double exhaust, but curiously this was omitted from the other 29 members of the class. Working at such a high pressure and then also having reduced exhaust is asking for trouble, so from 1956 onwards the entire class were topped up with a double chimney. The boiler pressure was also lowered somewhat to 250 psi, which is still 25 more than the castle class, but the tractive effort was lower than the castle this time. Reportedly, the ride quality on the counties was not ideal. Having a boiler working at such a high pressure didn't pair well with just having two outside cylinders. It results in the engine rocking side to side in time with the valves rather violently. Despite this, the fastest run by a county ever claimed was 99 miles an hour, or 159 kilometers an hour. The locomotive was roaring down Dauncey Bank between Swindon and Bristol. Driver Bill Brown of Bristol Bath Road was challenged by an unnamed passenger to do 100 coming down the bank. Timings indicate he didn't quite reach the magic number, but Bill said his speedometer indicated well over 100. I would say better luck next time, but both Bill and the counties are no more, so pity about that. This alleged inability of the class to reach 100 didn't stop them from being used on the Great Western Railway's prestigious expresses. Often taking over from Castles and Kings, the counties were quite at home on trains such as the Cornishman, the Cheltenham Spa Express, and the various expresses coming out of London Paddington. The counties were rated D in the GWR power classification system, better known as 6MT for the people unaware with the Western pernickety systems, myself included. The counties were further distinguished from the other two-cylinder 10-wheeler counterparts by being rated DX, the X indicating that loads slightly exceeding D were also permitted. They were no strangers to the London Paddington to Penzance expresses, being careful not to meet pirates or modern major generals along the way. Wolverhampton to Shrewsbury also provided favourable runs for these locomotives, although I cannot find any reasons why. They were somewhat restricted on the GWR's network, as their weight did not allow them to travel over the non-mainline tracks. All 30 counties were withdrawn between 1962 and 1964. The last 8 were withdrawn from Swindon Shed, ending their working lives the same place it started. For those unaware, all GWR locomotives since a very long time ago were built at Swindon. I think it's safe to say that the counties didn't receive any significant fanfare, even less than the other lesser GWR 10-wheelers. The thing is with most of these lesser 10-wheelers is that they are still represented today by a healthy amount of locomotives. Well, apart from the Granges, but when was the last time someone ever complained about those engines not being around anymore? Oh. Well, that's killed that bit. Let's see. Speaking of new builds, a new county is under construction at Didcot Railway Centre. They are actually using an LMS 8F boiler and an original chimney from a production county class. That chimney must be at least 64 years old, so whether that makes the new build a replica, a new production member, a rebuild, or whatever other term the armchairs use to justify their dislike of the poor machine is up for debate, I guess. Anyway, I'm just happy that the very model of a modern Western 10-wheeler has a chance of standing proudly in preservation. Hello people, could you tell I know jack all about the GWR? All the books I have give portraits or details about the pre-war GWR, so when you've decided to make your video about a post-war locomotive, that kind of make these books you wanted to use as sources useless. Still, I think I managed to pull it off. Now, this is actually the second time I'm recording this script. I recorded the original take alongside the Resident Evil Village script, but when those recordings were used in the Big Resi video, link below and in the card, I deleted the whole batch of recordings by accident. Oh well, at least my favourite GWR 460 got their time in the limelight on my channel at least. The next look I'm going to talk about will definitely be the GCR Improved Director class. After that, the LMS Princess is next, and after that, I don't actually know. I feel like doing a tank engine. I might do the various Drummond Pugs if there's enough material. Although the Fowler 4P tanks also take my fancy, come to think. Who knows. Also, let me know if you'd like to see a Riviera line review in the same style as my Woodhead line review. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, well, tough luck. I don't really have an upload schedule. But if you like disappointment, you can always subscribe, I guess. If you like this type of content, consider checking out Anthony Leslie Dawson's channel. He's actually one of the main inspirations for me making these, quotations, educational videos. His videos also have the benefit of being produced by an actual historian instead of, well, me. So, like, comment, subscribe. I hope to see you all next time. Cue obnoxiously loud outro.